Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Grantha Raj Ki Jai. Oh, your clock is wrong, right?
Yeah, that's
1 hour wrong? Is it 1 hour?
No, I think that is stopped now almost. It needs change of battery. Initially it was 1 hour behind, like we didn't change it.
Okay, so today we're going to have a special lesson. So you can turn to the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 15.
That's what I thought.
Oh, I think you're right to the start.
13. I'm lost.
Oh, we're studying chapter 15 in Sunday school.
Same.
So today we're going to have a science lesson.
Yay.
We're going to learn today the difference between the material world and the spiritual world. Okay? And if you want to take notes, you
Yeah,
can.
अगस्त्य आप ले लो अपना लिखने वाला.
You want to take notes?
पापा को दे दो, पापा पकड़ेंगे. आप जाओ, फट से लिखा लो. वहाँ से दूसरा पेंसिल ले लो बेटा.
The only reason why I thought it was chapter 15 because that's the one we're learning and that's the only one I know.
That's good. I'm glad. You're studying in Sunday school?
Sunday school.
Good. Chapter 15. Very good. I didn't know that.
You're way ahead. Very nice.
So we're going to have a science lesson today. And if you want to take notes, you can, because we're going to discuss a lot of interesting things. And basically we're going to understand the difference in the spiritual world and the material world. And if you understand this, then you won't be confused. Okay, so I'm going to read something, and then first, and you're going to take a few notes, and then we're going to read the Bhagavad Gita in the first 5 verses.
Okay.
So, it says, the absolute truth, meaning Lord Krishna, is both subject and object. So we write down subject and object. So, subject and object, S-U-B-J-E-C-T, and object, O-B-J-E-C-T. Subject, S-U-B-J-E-C-T.
So what do you
Subject.
write?
Subject, S-U-B-J-E-C-T. Subject. And then write down object, O-B-J-E-C-T.
बच्चा लोग देखा देखा.
So the absolute truth is Krishna. And he is both subject and object. What does that mean? That means that the whole purpose of studying is to know Krishna. That's the subject of the Vedas. It's to teach us who is Krishna. And everything we see is an expansion of Krishna, and that's all the objects. Like we're also an expansion of Krishna, so we are object. Right? So it says the absolute truth is both subject and object, and there's no qualitative difference there. So Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything is coming from Krishna, like the material world, you and me, everything you see. So the whole purpose of knowledge or education is to know Krishna. because he's the origin of everything. And everything you see, including ourselves, we are object. We're coming from Krishna. So that means that Krishna is the seer, and we are the seen. So you say subject, object, you put seer, seen underneath. Underneath subject, put seer, and underneath object, put seen. So, Krishna is the subject, and he's the original seer. He's seeing everything. And we are the object, and we are the seen. And there's no qualitative difference between ourselves and Krishna. What does that mean? Yes.
So like our qualities are the same. Like the things that we can do.
Krishna can lift Govardhan Hill. Can you lift
Except
Govardhan?
they're not in this, like, I can lift something light, like a book, but I can't lift Govardhan Hill. So we both can lift.
So are we qualitatively equal?
Yeah.
But we're not what?
Quantitatively equal.
Right. So you can lift a book, but you can't lift Govardhan Hill. Krishna can lift Govardhan Hill. Right? But qualitatively we're the same because we come from Krishna. So we have eternity, we have bliss and knowledge, but it's not equal to Krishna's. Well, eternity is eternity, but it's not, the bliss and knowledge are not equal to Krishna's. Right? He has unlimited bliss and knowledge. We have limited bliss and knowledge. So, everything is coming from Krishna, and he is both the subject and object. Now, can you as a person, are you both the subject and the object?
Yeah, in context, like sometimes we are seeing something, somebody else is seeing us in material sense.
No, but the subject would mean that you are the goal of all knowledge.
Yeah, no, that's
No.
not.
No, we're all objects. Krishna is saying,
Yeah.
in a limited context, due to false ego, we think we're the subject, right?
Yes.
But it's not true, actually. Okay, so although we're qualitatively one with Krishna, we have eternity, bliss, and knowledge, but quantitatively we're not one. Okay, so today we're having a special class, and we're going to read from the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And the theme of the class today is we're going to learn the difference between the material world and the spiritual world. So, and you might want to take notes. So we're saying that the absolute truth, meaning Krishna, who's the absolute truth, is both subject and object. That means he is the cause and he is the effect. So write down that. You had subject, object, seer, seen, and underneath that write cause and effect. And cause and then dash effect. E-F-F-E-C-T. So Krishna is the subject and object. He's the cause and the effect. He's the seer and he's the seen. So we're having a special class today on the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and we're going to learn the difference between the spiritual world and the material world. And it's good to take notes. So in the spiritual world, Krishna is the subject and the object, the seer and the seen, and the cause and the effect. Got that? So, there are three levels of knowing the absolute truth. That is Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Okay?
Wait, 3 ways of knowing what?
3 levels of knowing the absolute truth, or Krishna. There's Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So the Brahman is the effulgence coming from Krishna's body. And Paramatma is Krishna who expands himself as Vishnu and is present in the heart of every living entity. That's Paramatma. And Bhagavan is Krishna himself in his original form, from which everything else comes. The Paramatma, the Brahman, all the jivas, the material world, everything is coming from Krishna. Now, people have different realizations of Krishna due to their different levels of consciousness. So some people understand God as Brahman. Some people understand God as Paramatma. And some people understand God as Bhagavan, Krishna. So usually, those who are like jnanis, they're studying all the time, they understand Krishna as the impersonal Brahman. They understand Krishna as Paramatma. And those who are devotees, they understand Krishna as Bhagavan in his original form. So the jnanis, the people that study the Vedas all the time, they understand Krishna as the Brahman effulgence. And those who are yogis and doing yoga and meditation and so forth, they understand Krishna as Paramatma. And those who are devotees, who engage in Krishna's service, they understand Krishna as Bhagavan, or Supreme Personality of Godhead. But these 3 levels of understanding Krishna are all about Krishna. It's just like 3 blind men come. There's an elephant in the road, and one blind man runs into the leg of the elephant and puts his arm around it and says, "It's a tree." Another blind man runs into the nose of the elephant and he says, "It's a snake." And another blind man runs into the ear of the elephant and he says, "It's a leaf." Now, all 3 are holding on to the elephant. One is holding on to the ear, one is holding on to the trunk. I mean the head. It's called the proboscis, the nose. And one is holding on to the leg. So the one holding the leg thinks it's a. The one that's holding the proboscis, the nose is what?
Snake.
And one that's holding on to the ear is what?
Leaf.
You see? Now they're all holding on to the same elephant, but they have different understandings of the elephant. Well, they're blind also, but they have different understandings of what the elephant is. So in the same way, some people, like the Jnanis who study the Vedas, they think that Krishna is, or God is the light, the Brahman effulgence. And other people think he's Paramatma, so those who are yogis doing meditation. And then other people think that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, these are called different angles of vision. Different angles of vision. A-N-G-L-E-S. Different angles of vision based on people's limited senses.
Like different angles of what?
Vision. Based on people's limited senses. Like if you're blind and you grab a hold of the elephant's leg, you think the elephant is a tree. Okay? So now, we've been discussing Krishna now, and this is all in the spiritual world. He's both the subject and the object. In other words, he is the source of everything, and from him come Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, understanding of God. So he's the subject, and he's also the object. As the subject, he's the absolute truth from which everything comes. And as the object, he's Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Or he's the cause and the effect. He's the cause of everything, and the effect would be Brahman, Paramatma, the material world. So all these things are non-different than him because they're all made of his energy. So he's the cause and the effect. He's the subject and the object. He's the seer and the seen. Because everything's made of his energies. Now, on top of that, Krishna is self-sufficient, meaning he doesn't need anybody else. He can produce everything with his own energies. He's self-sufficient. And he's all-knowing. He has all knowledge. He doesn't have to go to school. He doesn't have to read a book. He has all knowledge. And this is our lesson today, he's free from the illusion of relativity. Free from the illusion of relativity. So he's self-sufficient, all-knowing, and he's free from the illusion, I-L-L-U-S-I-O-N, free from the illusion of relativity, R-E-L-A-T-I-V-E-T-Y, relativity. No, I'm sorry, R-E-L-A-T-I-V-I-T-Y, relativity. He's free from the illusion of relativity. Now, all this is about Krishna and the spiritual world. Okay? Now we're going to contrast that with the material world. In the material world, the knower is different than the known. The knower, K-N-O-W-E-R, is different than the known in the material world. The knower, K-N-O-W-E-R, is different than the known. But in the spiritual world, now add this, the knower is not different than the known. The knower and the known are one. So we have subject and object, seer and seen, cause and effect, and knower and known in the spiritual world. But in the material world, the knower and the known are different. So the material world is a place where there is the illusion of relativity. That's the material world. In the material world, there's the illusion of relativity. And we're going to explain that now. This is our lesson today. And to understand that, we have to read the first couple of verses of the 15th chapter. So up until now, we explained things that in the what's going on in the spiritual world, and now we're going to explain the differences between the spiritual world and the material world. One of the main differences is in the material world, there's the illusion of relativity, and in the spiritual world, everything is absolute. So if you just write that down, that is a summary of the whole class today. So write down, material world, there is the illusion of relativity. The material world, in the material world, there's the illusion of relativity. And in the spiritual world, everything is absolute. In the material world, there is the illusion of relativity. R-E-L-A-T-I-V-I-T-Y. Relativity. We'll explain what that is. And in the spiritual world, everything is absolute. In the material world, there's the illusion of relativity, and in the spiritual world, everything is absolute. Now we're gonna read why what is this illusion of relativity? We're gonna explain it now. Right? And one thing, just so you understand, in all public schools and all schools of mundane knowledge, they try and convince you that everything is relative. Relative means one thing depends on something else. And both of them are relative. And then, because that something else depends on something else. And then the next something depends on something else relative. And then the next something depends on something else that's relative.
So they're basically trying to say maybe Krishna is depending on something else.
Well, they'll say that because they say everything is relative. But that's not true. Because Krishna is absolute. In the spiritual world, everything is absolute. In the material world, they claim that everything is relative, although that's actually an illusion. Because everything in the material world depends on who?
Krishna.
Krishna. And Krishna is absolute. But in order to be an atheist, you have to believe in the illusion of relativity and that there's no absolute. That's the basis of atheism. They believe that everything is relative and there are no absolutes. Okay. Now we're going to see, now we're going to understand in a very profound way what is the illusion of relativity. So let's read chapter 15, text number 1. Who wants to read? Okay, Agastya. Just go very slowly and read out loud.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "It is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree."
What does imperishable mean? Yes?
It doesn't die.
Yeah, imperishable. Im means not. Perishable means it can be destroyed. So it's never destroyed. Okay. So there's a tree, a banyan tree that's imperishable. You can't destroy it. Go ahead.
That has its roots upward and its branches down.
Have you ever seen a tree with its roots up and its branches down? Okay. So you've never seen an imperishable tree, and you've never seen a tree with its roots up and its branches down. Yes.
Yeah, in material world that tree is dead with roots up and
Yeah, but it can't be. But this one is not dead. It's imperishable. Go ahead.
That
You can't destroy it. Go ahead.
and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas.
Ah, very good. So purport.
After the discussion of the importance of Bhakti Yoga, one may question, what about the Vedas? It is explained in this chapter that the purpose of Vedic study is to understand Krishna. Therefore, one who is in Krishna consciousness, who is engaged in devotional service, already knows the Vedas.
Ah, interesting. If you're engaged in devotional service to Krishna, you already understand the Vedas. Now, what are people doing? They're taking Bhakti Shastra, then they're taking Bhakti Vaibhava, and they might even take Bhakti Vedanta. But here it says, if you're engaged in devotional service, you already know the Vedas. So what does that mean? What is the goal of the Vedic study? Huh? Huh?
serve
Yeah.
Krishna.
I think it means like you know part of the Vedas, and you probably need to know more about it.
No. After what we just said, if you're engaged in devotional service, you know the Vedas. Yes.
And do the devotional service. Like devotional service is the goal.
Yeah. So I mean,
It's what?
if you study Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and all these books, and you're not engaged in devotional service, do you know the Vedas?
No.
No, you don't know anything. It was just a waste of time. You see. But let's say you can't pass the Bhakti Shastri class, but you're always engaged in devotional service. Do you know the Vedas?
Yes.
Yes. Because what is the goal of the Vedas?
Understand Krishna.
The goal of the Vedas is to know Krishna. And if you know Krishna, you will be engaged in Krishna's service always. So, okay, so go ahead.
Therefore, one who is in Krishna consciousness, who is engaged in devotional service, already knows the Vedas.
Okay, now we know what is the real Bhakti Shastra. Always engaged in Krishna's service. Go ahead.
The entanglement of this material world is compared here to a banyan tree.
Okay, so this banyan tree that's imperishable has its roots upward and its branches downward is compared to the entanglement of the material world. Okay? Keep that word in your mind. Entanglement of the material world. And what are we doing? We're comparing the spiritual world to the material world. In the spiritual world, there's no illusion of relativity. And in the material world, there's the illusion of relativity. So, in the material world and material education, they teach you that everything is relative. There are no absolutes. And in the spiritual world, everything is absolute. And the whole material world is relative to Krishna, who is absolute. But the materialists and the atheists say there's no absolutes. There's only relative things. Right? And that is an illusion. As long as people have the illusion of relativity, they remain an atheist. Now we're going to connect this to Einstein's law of relativity. And you'll see that the whole thing is nonsense, including Einstein. And you have never heard this before, have you? No. Everybody thinks Einstein's the smartest person in the world, right? He's actually stupid. Because he has codified the illusion of relativity. Okay? So go ahead. I guess the entanglement.
The entanglement of this material world is compared here to a banyan tree. For one who is engaged in fruitive activities, there is no end to the banyan tree.
What is a fruitive activity? Who can say? What is fruitive activity? By the way, there's no such word as fruitive. Prabhupada coined this word.
Oh, I didn't know that.
All activities devoid of Krishna.
Now it's become before there was no, you couldn't find a dictionary. Now you find it in a dictionary, thanks to Prabhupada. Yeah. What is it?
All activities that we do without keeping Krishna in center, so that is fruitive.
Well, that's a roundabout way of defining.
So you expect the results from every, let us suppose if I
Yeah,
do
you
something,
want the
something
fruit of
results.
the activity. You think the fruit of the activity belongs to you. Who does the fruit of the activity belong to?
Krishna.
Yeah. So the whole concept of false proprietorship is the basis of material life. Okay, go ahead.
He wanders from one branch to another, to another, to another. The tree of this material world has no end, and for one who is attached to this tree, there is no possibility of liberation.
Yes, a person who is engaged in fruitive activities, selfish activities meant for their self-indulgence. What does that word mean, self-indulgence?
Senses.
Yes, it's sense gratification. In other words, a person who smokes a cigar is self-indulging themselves. A person who goes to a spa. A spa is a place you can get a massage, right? And other things for your body. They're self-indulging. A person who buys a very expensive bed that has a computer with it and you can adjust the softness and the hardness, that is self-indulging for yourself. Okay? Go ahead. So there's no possibility of liberation for a person who is engaged in fruitive activities. And there's no end to the fruitive activities. Go ahead.
The Vedic hymns meant for elevating oneself are called the leaves of this tree. The tree's roots grow upward because they begin from where Brahma is located, the topmost planet of this universe. If one...
It's an indestructible tree of illusion. What does illusion mean? Yeah.
Like something that's like fake, it's not really there, but it seems like it's there.
Yeah, it's like,
That which is not.
It's like going to the House of Horrors in the
Universal Studio.
Oh, it's a Universal Studio.
Yeah, I
Okay.
had gone there once, like a long time before this.
What did you see in the House of Horrors?
I couldn't see much. I was just like so scared. They basically took me out from there.
Oh, they had to take you out? You were screaming? Now, you went in there in order to have a good time, right? And you came out screaming.
Screaming means probably like all of them, like they pushed me in the front. I was in the front. I was seeing like it's like horrible. Like I screamed so much. I basically fell down, and they took me out from one side.
Now, why would so? And you had to pay for a ticket, right?
Yeah, must have.
Yeah. So why would one go into the House of Horrors in order to enjoy?
Complete foolishness.
Does that make sense? You go into the House of Horrors in order to enjoy. But yet, people do that. Where's the person who did it?
We all have done it.
Huh?
Everybody has done it. But now,
Okay, so why did I bring that up? Because the idea is that by engaging in fruitive activities, I will enjoy more sense gratification. But actually, you're going into a house of horrors. Because there's a law in material nature. Just like there's the law of gravity, right? Well, there's the law in material nature. Let's take a look at this 5th chapter. And 12th verse. One second. Not the 12th verse. 5th chapter. 5th chapter.
अगस्त्य उसको बोलो अगस्त्य बुक उसके ऊपर रखने के लिए
5th chapter.
Mata, Gita book ko kaya to.
Okay, 5th chapter, what is it, 18th verse? 1 second, I'm just finding this. Oh yeah, 5th chapter, 22nd verse. 5th chapter, 22nd verse. Read the last line. Somebody read the last line of the purport. This is a law of nature that nobody knows about. Who wants to read the last line? 5th chapter, 22nd verse. Can you read?
Yeah.
Yeah, read out loud.
22nd, right?
Yeah.
Therefore, those who are true yogis or
No.
just the last line
Just the last line.
the more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he is entrapped by material misery.
Can you explain what that means?
As we try to enjoy more, we get more addicted, and we get trapped by the material miseries. We actually go to enjoy, but we in return we get something else. We don't get actual enjoyment. We get miseries,
We might have some enjoyment,
but that is very little.
but it's always accompanied by misery.
Yeah.
Did you know that this is a law of nature? You know the law of gravity, right? What goes up must come down. Did you know that this is a law of nature? The more you try for material pleasures, the more you suffer. Did you know that? Yeah. Do you believe it?
Yes, absolutely.
Is it because you have personal experience, or is it because theoretically you believe it?
In practical experience that I'm seeing outside, like very famous people, rich people, with millions and millions of dollars, they commit suicide and they do bad things, and
They suffer.
they suffer a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, the best example is John Kennedy, right? President of the United States, beautiful wife, he's rich, he's a war hero, he's president, he's the most powerful man in the world, and he got assassinated. Right at the peak of his fame, he was assassinated, shot, killed, snuffed out. His brother, Robert Kennedy, Attorney General of the United States. After his brother died, he ran for president. He was going to be president. Assassinated. He's very rich, had a beautiful wife, he's a handsome guy, high education, He would have definitely been voted in as president. He was assassinated. Right? So, this is the law of nature. Most people don't understand it yet.
I have a question.
Yes.
I didn't have a question.
Oh, you just raised your hand because you're stretching your arm? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he is entrapped by material miseries. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, yes.
Go ahead, Augustine. Yeah.
So when it talks about addicted to material pleasures, it's not just the usual material pleasures. It also mean people who are like working like crazy because they want to attain.
Why
a
are they
certain
working
level
like crazy?
to earn more money, I guess, or
To do what with the money?
Sense gratification.
sense gratification.
Okay, there you go. Now you know why people work crazy. Because they want to go crazy with sense gratification, and then they go crazy with misery.
But sometimes you don't have an option, right? You will have to work that hard.
Ah, good question. Actually, no. You know, and I'm going to explain something very interesting right now. We are not meant to work very hard. Working very hard is like a curse. Because if you work so hard and have no time for Krishna consciousness, you've wasted your life. And you just get sick, and you're always worried. We're not meant to work so hard. So now America is a place where people really work hard, right? Some people have 2 or 3 jobs, and you know they're always active, and they get tired, and they have no time for spiritual life, or very little time for spiritual life. Yeah, you know, at one time, the H-1B people were working so hard that they never went home. They slept underneath the computer at work. They were afraid to go home because it's so competitive. They would sleep underneath the computer, right? And then wake up, not even brush their teeth or bathe, and just keep working. You know. So that working real hard is actually a symptom of being completely in illusion of material life. So when you follow spiritual practices, Krishna will give you a situation in which you have to work, but you still have time for spiritual life because you minimize your material needs. The more you know, the more you minimize your material needs. And therefore you reach a plateau where you're working, you know, let's say 8 hours a day, and you have the rest of the day to do spiritual activities. So this is a type of lifestyle that can be maintained. But if you're working harder and harder and harder, just like this one man I know, he was the director of all Microsoft's activity in India. You know, all the employees in India were working under him. And he had a very big position. He was working all the time. Never had time to do anything else except to work. Then he had a heart attack. He almost died. Almost died. Came close, very close to dying, right? Because, you know, he wasn't interested in being careful about what he ate. He wasn't sleeping enough. He was always flying around the world. And always had problems here, problems there, right? But he's making a lot of money, right? Had a heart attack, almost died.
But did he die at the end?
Huh?
Did he die at the end?
He's still alive, but you know, he has to be real careful because he had a serious heart attack. So nowadays, people have heart attacks when they're like, 35, 40 years old. There's one devotee, not even 50 years old, He had a heart attack in India when we were there. He's not even 50 years old. Okay, so this. So keep reading now. Let's go back. We're reading about the illusory banyan tree,
So,
which is indestructible.
the process of extrication should be understood,
Extrication means what?
like getting out.
Yeah, getting free of.
In the previous chapters, it has been explained that there are many processes by which to get out of the material entanglement. And up to the 13th chapter, we have seen that devotional service to the Supreme Lord is the best way. Now, the basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activities and attachment to the transcendental service of the Lord. The process of breaking attachment to the material world is discussed in the beginning of this chapter. The root of this material existence grows upward. This means that it begins from the total material substance, from the topmost planet of the universe. From there, the whole universe is expanded with so many branches, representing the various planetary systems. The fruits represent the results of the living entity's activities, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Now, there is no ready experience in this world of a tree situated with its branches down and its roots upwards. But there is such a thing. That tree can be found beside a reservoir of water.
Reservoir.
Reservoir of water. We can see that the trees on the bank reflect upon the water with their branches down and their roots up. In other words, the tree of this material world is only a reflection of the real tree of the spiritual world. This reflection of the spiritual world is situated on desire, just as a tree's reflection is situated on water. Desire is the cause of things being situated in this reflected material light. One who wants to get out of this material...
Okay, so that means that everything in our life depends on the quality of our desires. If we are indoctrinated by material education, we begin to desire things for sense gratification. That's the whole purpose of material education, is to convince a young student that the goal of life is sense gratification, selfish indulgence. And to have more sense gratification, you need more money. And to get more money, you need an education that teaches you to work like a donkey, day and night, right? So that you make more and more money. But usually, people are never satisfied, no matter how much money they have. So, they work like a donkey their whole life.
They're working for the free grass.
And the grass grows free, but the donkey thinks, oh, my master has given me a bucket of grass. He's so nice. But the grass is growing free. So, this hard work, this is called, in Sanskrit, the pavarga. In Sanskrit, you have what's called consonants. Right? There are verbs and consonants. So the consonants, the pavarga are the P, B consonants. Pa, ba, ma. Pa, ba, ma. Right? So pa means pavarga, working really hard. And pa means you work so hard that you foam at the mouth. Just like you see some animals, when they work really hard, they start foaming from the mouth. And human beings do it also, when they work really hard. Pa, ba, and you feel frustration. Baha means you become fearful. and ma means death. So the pavarga means working hard, so hard that you foam at the mouth and you feel frustrated, and then you begin to feel fearful because of death. And
So like the word starting with those letters, like ma is mrityu,
Yeah.
bha is bhai.
yeah, each word has
Okay, yeah.
a meaning.
Mhm.
The first one, pa
Pa,
means
yeah.
pavarga.
Yeah, per varg. Varg means class, like
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So it goes like this. Like five of them just keep going like this.
Yeah.
So the per varg means like the row of the per.
Yes.
Okay.
The pa and the ba.
Yes.
Same.
Yes.
Very similar. So you work very hard, foam at the mouth like an animal, feel frustrated, and you become fearful, and you die. So apavarga means becoming free of the pavarga. Apavarga, right? So there's a verse. Apavarga means becoming free of the pavarga, the 5 types of suffering. Right? And you can become free of the pavarga by engaging in devotional service. So, therefore, there's a verse in Srimad Bhagavatam that says, Dharmasya hi apavargasya narto ritayopakalpate nartasya dharmakantikasya kamalabhaya hi smita. All occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. So what do you learn in mundane knowledge that are taught in all the schools now? Private schools, public schools. You learn to work for material gain. Why? Because then you can have sense gratification. And then you fall right into the pavarga. You work so hard that you're foaming at the mouth, you become frustrated, and then fearful, and then you die. That's the pavarga. And it's all because of the educational system. Everyone's trying to convince you gotta work hard. You gotta work really hard. And you gotta pass all these tests, and you have to get into the best school to learn the best way to have the best sense gratification. So the whole thing is misleading, and you end up in the tree of illusion, the banyan tree of illusion, where everything is relative. And there are no absolutes because they taught you that in school. There are no absolutes. Everything is relative. And you just go from one branch of the tree to the other. You can't figure out where the root is because every branch of a banyan tree goes downward and makes a root. But actually now they're going upward, right? Because it's an illusory banyan tree. It's an inverted banyan tree. And you can never find the root. You just go from one branch to another. And it's an imperishable banyan tree. It's unending. You can go birth after birth in different species doing the same thing, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Or eating, sleeping, fearing, and defending. Eating, sleeping, mating, and fearing. Or, in other words, the pavarga. Okay, go ahead now. Let's finish this.
One who wants to get out of this material existence must know this tree thoroughly through analytical study. Then he can cut off his relationship with it. This tree, being the reflection of the real tree, is an exact replica. Everything is there in the spiritual world. The impersonalists take Brahman to be the root of this material tree, and from the root, according to Sankhya philosophy, come Prakriti, Purusha, and then the 3 gunas, then the 5 gross elements, Pancha Mahabhuta, then the 10 senses, Dashendriya, mind, etc. In this way, they divide up the whole material world into 24 elements. If Brahman is the center of all manifestations, then this material world is a manifestation of the center by 180 degrees, and the other 180 degrees constitute the spiritual world. The material world is the perverted reflection, so the spiritual world must have the same variegatedness. But in reality, the Prakriti is the external energy of the Supreme Lord, and the Purusha is the Supreme Lord himself. And that is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Since this manifestation is material, it is temporary. A reflection is temporary, for it is sometimes seen and sometimes not seen. But the origin from whence the reflection is reflected is eternal. The material reflection of the real truth has to be cut off. When it is said that a person knows the Vedas, it is assumed that he knows how to cut off attachment to this material world. If one knows that process, he actually knows the Vedas. One who is attracted by the ritualistic formulas of the Vedas is attracted by the beautiful green leaves of the tree. He does not exactly know the purpose of the Vedas. The purpose of the Vedas, as disclosed by the personality of Godhead himself, is to cut down this reflected tree and attain the real tree of the spiritual world.
Okay, so this tree, which is unending, is an inverted reflection of the real banyan tree in the spiritual world. And people are looking for the root of the tree downwards, but actually it's upwards. So they'll never find it. And they're just going from one branch to the other of this banyan tree, eating, sleeping, mating, and fearing. Or pa, ba, ma. Right? Can you say that? Pa, ba, ma. Can you say it? Try it. Very good. Right. So, that means you work hard, you foam at the mouth, you become frustrated, you're fearful, and you die. So, the whole purpose of Vedic knowledge is to learn about Krishna, engage in Krishna's devotional service, and attain pure love of Krishna. And when you do that, you break your attachment to this illusory banyan tree in the material world. Okay? Then there's no more papa, baba, ma.
Is that like papaya?
No papaya, no.
But
Okay.
actually this material attachment, what it says about cutting off all this, so all the relationship which we have now, those are also illusory, right? The so-called father, mother, daughter, whatever it is.
You might have, it depends. See, the whole purpose is not to reject everything. That's what Mayavadis do. The whole purpose is transform everything into Krishna consciousness. Like your daughter, your son, your husband, your house, your television, everything.
But
That's
then it is like when you are adding television, it's also
What?
getting to sense gratification, right?
what?
A television also you said, right? Did I hear that correctly?
Well, you could use a television only to watch videos, Krishna, right? Or hear bona fide lectures on Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam.
So when you are-
Anything material can become spiritual by using it in the service of Krishna. The devotee knows how to use everything in the service of Krishna. We gave an example of marijuana. You could use marijuana in the service of Krishna, not by smoking it, not by eating it, but using the marijuana plant, you can make paper, you can make clothing, and you can make biodiesel. Right?
What's biodiesel?
Instead of using petroleum, you can use the oil of the hemp plant to run your car.
That's weird.
No, it's not. Why do you say it's weird? Well, you're not smoking it, you're not eating it. You're using it to make paper, you're using it to make clothing, and you're using it to make your car run.
But Prabhuji, with this relationship which you are saying, so we have to remember that these entities are services of like part and parcel of Krishna. Like your whole family members are basically they are part of Krishna, and that's how they should be attached to Krishna. Is what like you can, whatever you can facilitate, being there. That part like you can do. But then how isn't it a very tricky thing like? Completely forgetting that they are also, you are also in a relationship, and just remembering them being a part of Krishna. How it like, how do you tell yourself inside you? Do you understand what I meant?
Yes. Well, see, the natural tendency of people is to become attached materially. And therefore, the more you're materially attached, the less you see how to connect people to Krishna. But if you become detached from material sense gratification and attached to Krishna, then you see how to bring people to Krishna without the downside of increasing sense gratification. So, like for example, if you actually believe that offering food to Krishna with sincere prayers and making things that Krishna likes, he will accept the offering and offer it back as his prasad, or his mercy. If you actually have faith in it. Then, one way to transform your family is to be very meticulous and sincere about offering the food that you cook to Krishna, so that he'll offer it back as his prasadam, and you'll feed your family that prasadam. And eventually you'll see they will have a change of mentality. The prasadam will act. So you have to have that faith. But nothing happens overnight. Like let's say a person has really bad habits, and they've been engaging in those bad habits, eating junk and staying up late and watching movies and all these things till 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning, and playing on the computer and cheating on their tests and things like that. So they don't get sick right away. Consciously. No, it'll take time, knowing that one of these days they will wake up and say, I'm sick and tired of wasting my life in nonsense. And now I'm going to get more serious about chanting and dancing. Because dancing is very important. Right? Dancing for Krishna, chanting for Krishna, eating for Krishna, going to sleep early for Krishna, waking up early for Krishna. You see? It won't happen overnight, but it will happen if you're sincere. So, therefore, the key is to be patient and maintain your faith and not become discouraged. But if your goal is sense gratification, then you'll fall into the pavarga, papa, baba, ma. Right? You'll lose your patience, you'll get frustrated, and eventually you'll die not having accomplished anything other than being frustrated, working hard, and so forth. Okay, so, all right, now we finished this report, right? You finished reading it? Okay. So, in this first, we're going to read the next one too. See, we're trying to understand what is the illusion of relativity. This is what keeps us in the material world. The illusion of relativity. We think that everything is relative. There are no absolutes. We're taught that in school. We're taught that in science. It's actually junk science. It's not real science. It's junk. And because of that, we think, well, this religion, I'll follow it for material benefit. So I'll invite some priest to my house and he'll do Satyanarayana Puja so that my business will go better, so that my son will pass the SAT test, so that my grandmom's sore back will get healed, and blah, blah, blah. Right? So they will follow religion, but for material benefit, not for the real reason. What is the real reason? Real reason is Om Tat Sat. You know what that means? Om Tat Sat. First of all, Om. The A means Krishna. The U means Radharani. And the M means Radharani also. So, Om means actually Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is accompanied by Srimati Radharani, who is always engaged in his devotional service, pure devotional service. And the Ma means that through steady devotional service, one can attain pure love of Krishna like Radharani. So now we know what the real meaning of Om is. It means Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Radharani is his internal energy of pure love and devotion, and she engages in pure devotion unfailingly, and the result is one attains pure love for the Lord. That's what Om means. And so Om and Tat means engaging in devotional service, and Om Tat Sat means you attain eternal love for the Lord. This is the real meaning of Om Tat Sat. So, therefore, if we engage in the service of the body and sense gratification, and we make relationships with people based on relativity, you are my husband, but maybe not forever. Right. If I get sick and tired of living with you, I'll get a divorce and find another husband, or another wife, or whatever. I mean, everything is relative, right? So you don't take anything seriously. The only thing you take seriously is sense gratification. Right? That's serious. If there's frustration and sense gratification, then you get really frustrated and angry. And then eventually you fall deeper and deeper into illusion. Right? So this is the tree of illusion, in which there is the ultimate illusion of relativity. Okay, so let's read the second verse now. Who wants to read the second verse? Yes. The branches. 15th chapter, second verse.
The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society. Purport. The description of the banyan tree is further explained here. Its branches spread in all directions. In the lower parts, there are variegated manifestations of living beings, human beings, animals, horses, cows, dogs, cats, etc. These are situated on the lower parts of the branches, whereas on the upper parts are higher forms of living entities, the demigods, Gandharvas, and many other higher species of life. As a tree is nourished by water, so this tree is nourished by the three modes of material nature. Sometimes we find that a tract of land is barren for want of sufficient water, and sometimes a tract is very green. Similarly, where particular modes of material nature are proportionately greater in quantity, the different species of life are manifested accordingly. The twigs of the tree are considered to be the sense objects. By development of the different modes of nature, we develop different senses, and by the senses, we enjoy different varieties of sense objects. The tips of the branches are the senses, the ears, nose, eyes, etc. which are attached to the enjoyment of different sense objects. The twigs are sound, form, touch, and so on.
The
The
sense
sense
of.
objects. The subsidiary roots are attachments and
Subsidiary.
The subsidiary roots are attachments and aversions, which are byproducts of different varieties of suffering and sense enjoyment. The tendencies towards piety and impiety are considered to develop from these secondary roots, which spread in all directions. The real root is from Brahmaloka, and the other roots are in the human planetary systems. After one enjoys the results of virtuous activities in the upper planetary systems, he comes down to this earth and renews his karma or fruitive activities for promotion. This planet of human beings is considered the field of activities.
Okay, now see, it's getting really complicated, but actually a simple explanation is, first of all, this tree is imperishable. You can't destroy it. Secondly, it's illusory. It's a inverted reflection of the real tree. Third, it has no end. You can keep going in a cycle of birth and death indefinitely. Why? Because your soul is eternal. The soul is eternal. The material world is also eternal. And you can stay in the material world eternally, suffering, changing bodies, trying to, going through the pavarga, papa, baba, ma. How do you say that? Very good. So, you see, and all the time you've become convinced everything is relative, there are no absolutes, and you're bewildered by duality. Should I live in India? Should I live in America? Should I invest in this stock or that stock? Should I work for Amazon or should I work for Microsoft? Should I do this or should I do that? You're always confused by dualities. Everything is relative, nothing is absolute, and you're always being troubled by the papa, baba, ma, and you have different miseries of this body, miseries caused by other bodies, miseries caused by cataclysmic events, and time is your enemy. As it goes on and on, you get older and sicker, and eventually you die. And all these things are negative things, and you have to work really hard, and you never get enough sense gratification. You're never satisfied with how much money you have. It's unending, you see. And how can we break away from this illusory, inverted banyan tree? Going from branch to branch, seeking temporary sense gratification. Okay, so let's read the next verse and then we'll get to the answer to that question. Go ahead. Who wants to read? Ria is going to read. Very good.
The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination one must cut down the strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial.
Okay, so now, the main point we're going to hear now is, what is this weapon of detachment? Weapon of detachment, by which we're going to break free of this tree of illusion. Let's understand what detachment really means. Detachment means you don't reject anything. You simply are not interested in using something for sense gratification. Like, for example, if there is, let's say, a bed. So, Harivilas said, we must use the weapon of detachment to get rid of this imperishable banyan tree of illusion. So, I'm going to take everything in the house and throw it away. The bed, the television, everything. I want everything detached. In fact, I'm going to throw the house away. I just sleep under a tree, you know. And no, that's not detachment. Detachment means instead of using things for sense gratification, I should only use them in the service of Krishna. So I'm going to bring the bed back into the house and the other things, and now I'm only going to use them for serving Krishna. So I sleep in the bed, but only 6 hours, no more, because that's what Prabhupada says. It's enough. It's enough sleep, 6 hours. So in order to have a good 6 hours of sleep, I'm not going to eat late at night. I'm not going to eat samosas and pizzas and fries and veggie burgers, you know, like 10 o'clock at night, you know. And then I can't really get a good sleep because my stomach is full. And I wake up with a headache, you know, and the next day I'll be all drowsy anyway because I didn't really get good sleep. My stomach was trying to digest and nothing got digested, and so forth. So you have to stop eating 6 o'clock at night, so if you go to sleep 10 o'clock, you're already digested your food, you'll get, you know, a good sleep, and you can wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, 6 hours later, ready to go again. So we might need the bed, right? Not for sense gratification, but so you don't get a sore back sleeping on the floor, right? When you're younger, you can sleep on the floor, you don't get a sore back. But when you get old, like me, you sleep on the floor, and you can't really find a position where you feel comfortable, you know? Anyway, you get the point, right? You don't have to... Detachment means you get detached to using things for sense gratification. And you become attached to using things in the service of Krishna. So actually you're free of attachment and detachment. Because attachment and detachment are based on one's sense gratification. But when you base everything on pleasing Krishna, you're no longer attached, you're no longer detached. Because you're using everything dedicated to the service of the Lord. So the weapon of detachment is, can I use this thing in the service of Krishna? Well, I can't use the marijuana plant and smoke it for Krishna. I can't offer it to Krishna. He doesn't smoke marijuana. Right? But I could use the marijuana plant to make paper, to make clothing, to make biogas, and use those things in the service of Krishna. So I become detached for using something for sense gratification, but I become attached to using things correctly in the service of Krishna. So I'm neither attached or detached now, because my goal is to please Krishna. Okay, so we're going to use this weapon of detachment. Go ahead. Now let's read the purport. Read.
It is now clearly stated that the real form of this banyan tree cannot be understood in this material world. Since the root is upwards, the extension of the real tree is at the other end. When entangled with the material expansions of the tree, one cannot see how far the tree extends, nor can one see the beginning of this tree. Yet one has to find out the cause. I am the son of my father. My father is the son of such and such a person, etc. By searching in this way, one comes to Brahma, who is generated by the Garbhodakshari Sai Vishnu. Finally, in this way, when one reaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the end of research work. One has to search out that origin of this tree.
So one can start at any point in material nature and understand as you go back, you end up with Krishna. Like for example, we see this light. Now that light is being produced by electricity. And somewhere in the house are the breakers, the junction box, right? But that junction box is connected to another junction box in the neighborhood. And that junction box is connected to Puget Sound Energy's factory, right? Where they're producing the electricity. But they're producing electricity usually by using either petroleum or coal, sometimes water or wind, right? But the petroleum and the coal both are produced by plants that capture the energy of the sun through photosynthesis and produce simple sugars like glucose, and then the glucose is transformed into more stable sugary molecules, and then they're compressed over a long period of time, and it becomes either gas, coal, or oil. So now we're talking about the energy of the sun, right? The energy of the sun is coming from the sun globe, and inside the sun globe is Surya Narayana. And what is the origin of the sunshine? Is a reflection of the Brahma Jyoti coming from the spiritual world and reflected off of the sun, coming into the material world. And what is the Brahma Jyoti? It's the effulgence coming from the body of Krishna. So we started from the light bulb, and we ended up with Krishna. You can start at any point in material nature, and if you honestly go back, you'll end up with Krishna every time. So, that's what it says here. Like, for example, I have a mother and father. They have a mother and father. They have a mother and father. They have a mother and father. Eventually, you keep going back, you'll see Krishna, the original father. And that's what he says, I'm the seed-giving father of all living entities. Aham bija pradapita. So, that means that there is an absolute, that you keep going back far enough, you see the origin of everything. Everyone is looking for the original, or every scientist wants to find the origin of all energies in the world. If you find the origin of all energies in the world, you know everything. Right? But the scientists reject anything spiritual. They say there's only matter. So they'll never find the origin of all energies, because you have to go to the spiritual world. Yes.
We in Krishna 1, we have to go to the science competition. So we were studying today, and in one of the paragraphs it said that science never accepts anything supernatural.
Right. So it's actually not science, it's nonsense. It's non-science.
Non-science.
Okay, now look, for example, your heart is beating. What is the source of energy for the heart to beat? Do you know? Do the scientists know? Yes? Yes? Well, there's your soul and Krishna in the heart. Right? So something miraculous happens when the used blood comes back to the heart and gets regenerated again. Right? And then your body is able to produce blood, although scientists have never been able to reproduce real blood. They reproduce parts of it, but not the whole thing. And by the way, if any of you ever find the formula for producing blood, you would become the richest person in the world, richer than Jeff Bezos, and you could combine Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates. You can combine all of them, Larry Ellison, all of them. You would be richer than all of them. Right? The blood is the most precious substance in the world. It keeps people alive. Right? There's always a problem of getting more blood. You can only get blood from people. You can't make it. But the mystery of why your body is able to make blood, or the mystery why your blood gets rejuvenated by coming back to the heart, is because there's the presence of Paramatma and Jivatma in the heart. Just like in your cell phone, there's a battery. The battery doesn't charge itself. It has to you have to charge it from an outside source, right? If the battery stops working, your cell phone doesn't work. So in the same way, where is that source of energy that's keeping your heart beat? The heart can beat, it's a pump. It can beat for 100+ years. There's no pump that's ever been made by an industry that can go indefinitely for 100 years without breaking down or without malfunctioning. But your heart could go on for 100 years or more pumping. Where's the energy coming from? It's not simply from food. There's something else there. That is the soul. So the soul, and ultimately Krishna, is the source of all energies. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Let's take a look at this. Second, find it. Second chapter, 17th verse. Second chapter, 17th verse. Okay, look at the next to the last paragraph of that purport. It's a long purport. It says, the influence of the atomic soul can be spread all over a particular body. According to the Mundaka Upanishad, the atomic soul is situated in the heart of every living entity. And because the measurement of the atomic soul is beyond the power of appreciation of the material scientists, some of them assert foolishly that there is no soul. The individual atomic soul is definitely there in the heart, along with the supersoul, and thus all the energies of bodily movement are emanating from this part of the body. The corpuscles, which carry the oxygen from the lungs, gather energy from the soul. When the soul passes away from this position, the activity of the blood generating fusion ceases. Medical science accepts the importance of the red corpuscles, but it cannot ascertain that the source of the energy is the soul. Medical science, however, does admit that the heart is the seat of all energies of the body. Such atomic particles of the spirit whole are compared to the sunshine molecules. In the sunshine there are innumerable radiant molecules. Similarly, the fragmental parts of the Supreme Lord are atomic sparks of the rays of the Supreme Lord, called by the name Prabha, or superior energy. So whether one follows the Vedic knowledge or modern science, one cannot deny the existence of the spirit soul in the body, and the science of the soul is explicitly described in the Bhagavad Gita by the personality Godhead himself. So, what is the soul? Who knows what the size of the soul is? Augustia.
1/10,000 of the tip of the hair.
Okay, so you just described it. Can you actually see it?
No.
Could you see it with a electron microscope?
No.
1/10,000 tip of hair is really small, smaller than an atom. Now, how can we prove to someone who doesn't believe in anything in the Bhagavad Gita that the soul is actually that small? Who knows how we could prove it? We establish that the soul is 1/10,000 tip of hair. It's smaller than an atom. Atom already you can't see, right? So how can we prove to a person that doesn't believe anything in the Bhagavad Gita that the soul is so small? How do we prove it? Well, you were going to say something.
There are a lot of microorganisms, they are so small. There's something in there that is animating them. So that has to be even smaller than that.
Yes, but that doesn't relate directly to a human being. But that's a good observation that you made. But we want to talk about the human being. Okay, now I'm going to yes.
There are so many things which are unexplained which exist in human beings, and like something at the time of death, something happens.
No. You're going way off the subject.
Like air we can see, but
What?
air we can see, but we are breathing.
No.
And then the symptom of the like soul is
Huh?
when the soul is present, we see the symptom of the consciousness in the body.
No, that's not. It's not the explanation. We're talking about the size of the soul. Okay, now I'm going to explain it to you. Don't ever forget this again. I'll ask you again a couple weeks from now. We'll see who can remember it and who's not. You're going to prove to a person that doesn't believe in Bhagavad Gita, where it says the soul is 1/10,000th the tip of a hair, right? Based on Vedic verses. But we're going to prove to them that it's actually true. And it's like this. Would anyone deny that they were less than microscopic in the beginning of their life? Would anyone deny it?
No.
How do we know that we were less than microscopic?
Scientists have established it.
What?
Scientists have
Scientists have
established.
established it.
Well, how? How have they established? They established things on observation. Yeah. What did they observe?
The embryo.
No, embryo
No, smaller.
is already visible. We're talking about less than microscope. Okay. Well, how does life begin? It begins with a little fish that's microscopic, right? Coming from the father, entering into the womb of the mother and connecting with the ovum. That little fish is less than microscopic. Now you can see it, the fish with a microscope. You can't see it with the raw eye. But what's animating the fish is less than microscopic. That's the soul. So we all begin microscopically. Would anyone deny it? Do you deny it? Would you deny it? Would you deny it? So now you understand that soul is smaller than that fish. It's in the fish, but it's smaller than that fish. And that is our beginning. So it's not a far-fetched idea that the soul is less than microscopic. Already you need a microscope to see the fish. But what's animating the microscope, that fish, is the soul, which is even smaller. And no one can deny it. Is anyone going to deny they were less than microscopic in the beginning of their life? No. Does that make sense? So now you can see that it's not a far-fetched idea that the soul is smaller than an atom.
So probably how do we explain for the people who have transplanted the whole heart? It's totally transplanted. So it's possible now that we can heart transplant and we have an artificial heart.
So what? What are you trying to say?
So no, as the soul resides in heart.
No, it's like this one. Let's say you're sitting on a chair, okay, in this house. Then you go to the temple, you sit on another chair. Are you the same person sitting on the other chair?
Yeah.
Okay, so the heart transplant is just a chair. It's not the soul. So you put in another heart. It's just another chair that the person is sitting on. It's not that the person from the other body comes with that chair, and now you have two people in the heart. No, it's just a chair. So you sit on different chairs. You don't change your individuality by sitting in a different chair. The heart is a chair. It's no more than that. You know, it's a pump also. But just like you can say, you know, in India have these pumps, right? Like that, with the metal. But you could also, you know, take the handle off and use it as a hammer. So everything has more than one function. It's not just, it's not only a pump. It's also a chair in which the soul is sitting. Yes.
I think what Prabhuji is trying to say is that your soul resides in your heart, right? So when you change your heart, would that affect like the soul you have inside?
First of all, the soul is less than microscopic. So if you take one heart out and put another heart in, the only thing that's happened is that you change the physical thing that's holding the soul. You didn't change the soul. Okay. So let's take you take the heart out from a person who died already. By the way, they don't take the heart out while the person is alive.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would be accused of murder. A person has to die first, and they have to be medically dead. You have to have a certificate of death, and the doctors have to certify that the person is dead. You just can't take the heart out of someone and put it into someone else. And then they cut out the heart, so that the soul in that heart is already left. You understand?
Yeah.
And then the other person's heart doesn't work very good, so they take that out and they put in the other heart there. So you just change the chair, the physical place where the soul resides. You didn't change. You're not taking the soul that already is dead and putting it in the body of another person. Yes.
The habits and desires of the person who has got the transplant, it remains the same. He remains the same person.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
It's kind of like
Did you know that the person has to die before they take the heart out? Did you know that? Did you know that?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I didn't think about it, but
And then they have to have the proof that the person is dead. I mean, sometimes the brain continues to function after they're dead. You know, they have to be sure that the person is dead. There's no brain function, nothing. And then they have to quickly take the heart out and preserve it until they can actually put it into the person.
as an analogy to his question, would it be right to say, to give an analogy like, you know, the bulb, right?
Yeah.
The bulb goes kaput.
Yeah.
And then you change the bulb.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that whole thing changed. The electricity is behind it. It's just that the bulb went off. You just changed the bulb. So electricity is the spark or the soul, which is constantly there in the night lamp, right? For example, the electricity is there. It's just that the light goes out. So you just throw the light and then you bring in a new light. You're not changing the electricity
Yeah, but
behind
that's
it.
not a good example because the person died. You don't throw the heart away. Yeah, go ahead. Yes, Arush is first.
Why do they have to quickly take the heart out?
Because the heart will deteriorate. It won't it's a pump, right? But you let it rest too much, it won't function. Yeah. Why does it function? Because you're putting it in a body that has a soul in it. The other body, the soul left. The guy died. So the heart stopped beating. So you have to take it out quickly and then put it into the next person and, connect it, make all the connections, the arteries and so forth. And because there's a soul in the other body, it'll start functioning again. You see, if you don't analyze things correctly, you'll make a mistake. I mean, the first person actually died. They left the body. Right? But they quickly take the heart out, and when they put it in the other, and then take the other guy's heart out, and then replace this heart, because the soul is still in that body. See, they're taking the heart out and throwing it away. In other words, you think the person will die, right? That they're trying to replace the heart. No, because it's just a seat. It's not the soul itself. The soul is much more subtle than the heart or the body, right? So that person is not destined to die yet.
Yeah, and there's some examples of soul moving, right? Like there's some Muni who moved from his body to some thing's body and then came back.
Yeah,
So
of course.
it's not necessary that his soul is always sitting on that heart and it goes out with that heart. It would be there.
Now, you know how yogis travel? They can travel throughout the universe. They plug up the 9 holes of the body. It's a yogic practice. You swallow the tongue. You stop the ingoing air and the outgoing air. You plug all the 9 holes: 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, the mouth, the anus, the genital. So then the person is in suspended animation. They're still alive, but they're not breathing. And you know, the body stops function, but it doesn't die necessarily. Then the soul and the subtle body can leave the body and go. But it has to be kept in a place where animals and insects won't eat it. You know, and it's suspended. All the functions have stopped, but it doesn't deteriorate. Then the person can travel wherever they want and then can come back again and reassume the existence in that body. This is what the Egyptians were trying to do by embalming the mummy, the dead body, so that a person can travel and come back. But that's a material way of doing it. There's a yogic way of doing it. Okay? There are a lot of mysteries here. There are many mysteries in this world, but if you read Bhagavatam carefully, then all those mysteries are resolved. Okay.
So Prabhuji, when the soul goes out of the subtle body, so is it not the body is dead?
But no, it's a yoga technique where you've trapped the air in the body, and that'll keep you alive. In other words, it doesn't deteriorate. Let's put it like that. The body doesn't deteriorate. Although the soul leaves the body and travels around and comes back again.
Sankaracharya had done that one. He had done to go into a body of a king.
He went into the body of a king, yes. Yeah. Okay, so did we finish that? Did you finish? Go ahead, you finish it and then we'll stop.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead, through association of persons who are acknowledged.
Read louder. Start all over again.
Finally, in this way, when one reaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the end of the research. One has to search out that origin of this tree, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, through the association of persons who are in knowledge of that Supreme Personality of God. Then by understanding, one becomes gradually detached from this false reflection of reality. And by knowledge, one can cut off the connection and actually become situated in the real tree. The word asanga is very important in this connection because the attachment for sense enjoyment and lording it over the material nature is very strong. Therefore, one must learn detachment by discussion of spiritual science based on authoritative scriptures, and one must hear from persons who are actually in knowledge. As a result of such discussion and the association of devotees, one comes to the Supreme Personality of God. Then the first thing one must do is surrender to Him. The description of that place, when having gone over, never returns to this false reflected tree given here. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original root from whom everything has emanated. To gain the favor of that personality of Godhead, one has only to surrender, and this is a result of performing devotional service by hearing, chanting, etc. He is the cause of the extension of the material world. This has already been explained by the Lord Himself. Sarvasya Prabhava. I am the origin of everything. Therefore, to get out of the entanglement of this strong banyan tree of material life, one must surrender to Krishna. As soon as one surrenders onto Krishna, one becomes detached automatically from this material extension.
Okay, so surrender to Krishna, one becomes detached automatically from the material illusory tree of material attachment. Okay, so there's two things that we have to overcome. One, the desire to dominate and exploit nature, and two is attachment to everything we have accumulated by that domination, all material things that we've accumulated. And to do those two things is extremely difficult unless we have the association of genuine devotees. Those are two weaknesses of the heart. Our desire to dominate and enjoy, and by domination we acquire many material things and we become attached to them, and it's almost impossible to break that attachment. Okay, so we studied today in the beginning the difference between the material and spiritual worlds. One of the main differences is in the spiritual world there's no illusion of relativity. Everything is absolute. In the material world there is the illusion of relativity, and thus by being illusioned into believing everything is relative and there are no absolutes, one becomes a materialist and an atheist. And they stay under the illusion, in the illusory banyan tree, seeking out sense gratification and going up and down in the process of birth and death, from heavenly planets down to the hellish planets, back up again, up and down. It's called the Ferris wheel syndrome. The Ferris wheel syndrome. The Ferris wheel goes up, it comes down. It goes up, it goes down. When you're up, you're happy. When it comes down, you're not so happy. It goes up and then you're happy and you're not so happy. And that's what's happening to everyone. They're going up and down in that banyan tree and never finding what is the origin of it, unless they have the help of bona fide Shiksha and Diksha gurus. Okay, so we'll stop there. Are there any questions?
Prabhuji, like when you explain Om Tat Sat,
Yes.
so I kind of remember one question one of my friends had asked me, like why, like Shri Krishna, when we say it's like Shri is, we are referring to Radha initially, because the Krishna is, he has to be addressed, Radha is addressed before Krishna. So Sri Krishna. So why we say Sri Radha then?
Why we say?
Sri Radha. Radha itself is Sri, then why we say Sri Radha?
Again, you're mispronouncing the word. Stri, S-T-R-I.
Shri.
Sri.
No, but it's when you, okay. Shri does not necessarily refer to Srimati Radharani.
When we say Krishna, Sri Krishna.
Yeah. Shri is an honorific title. Just like the Honorable so-and-so. So Shri is a...
Shriman, we say Shriman means, if you are to in India, you call Shriman means, if you have to respectfully call a person, this is Shriman.
The venerable.
Or Srimati. If it's a female, it's called Srimati. If person, it's called Shriman. So it doesn't mean that there is no Radha here.
Yeah.
It's just like addressing with honor.
Yes. Yes.
Because like he explains, we always address Lakshmi Narayana. Like we put Lakshmi before Narayana. Like that, Sri
So
Radha.
we always put Radha Krishna. You don't just say Sri Krishna. You say Radha Krishna.
Even Shri Ram, we say Shri Ram, right?
So does
Ram
Sri
also
refer
Sri
to
Ram.
Sita? No, you say Sita
Shri
Ram.
Ram. We say Shri Ram also.
So there are two meaning of Sri.
What?
There are two meaning of Sri also.
There may be. But in general, if you want to say, you want to refer to Radharani, Radha, you say Radha Krishna, or you say Sita Ram, or Lakshmi Narayana. You don't say Sri Narayana.
Shriman Narayana.
Yeah. Yeah, but, okay.
The Shri is just, I think respect is the only thing I know from
Srimad Bhagavad Gita. We say Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is not just Srimad Bhagavatam. Sorry, Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yeah, let it go. Yeah.
So it depends
That
upon
Shri is
where
different.
the word is used.
Yeah, it is contextual.
So what is the point you were trying to make?
So now he asked me why you say Sri Radha, because anyway with Sri before Krishna makes sense. But if
In other words, you're saying Radha Radha, right?
yeah.
When you say Shri Radha. No, the word Shri is an honorific title. Just like the venerable so-and-so, or the honorable judge so-and-so. Or the president of the United States. You know, it's an honor. You're honoring the person with that reference.
Look, another thing my son once asked me, what kind of house will we have in the spiritual world?
Yeah, it will be made of Chintamani. You know what Chintamani is? It's a touchstone. Whatever it touches it, it becomes transcendental. It's a touchstone. It produces things like jewels and gold and beautiful things. That's why it's called Chintamani Dham. Everything is transcendental. So you live in a beautiful house made of Chintamani. You'll be living in Chintamani Dham, transcendental abode. Chintamani Prakasad Kapariksha Laksha Britesha Sudhira Palyantam. Yeah, so it's Chintamani Dham, it's the transcendental abode. Everything is wonderful. Okay, I'm going to ask you. You can wrap. You can wrap all these things up. I'll drink this and I'll have a little bit of mango. Everything else you can wrap up. I'll take with me. I'll taste a little bit, but everything else you can wrap up. One, two, three, four.
Okay, so I'll take it now. Or
Yeah, take it, wrap it. So you live in a beautiful house in the spiritual. Made of touchstone. Whatever touches that becomes spiritual. Meaning it's eternal.